So that's my idea. And I'm really excited about provoking people enough to push the drown button.
You are playing with fire. Have you not seen any reality TV lately? They will drown you.
Berni. Hi, Berni.
Hi.
How are you?
Oh my gosh, I'm excited and I'm nervous. I'm sitting in my home in St. John's, Newfoundland. Yesterday we had snow and an eclipse. No triffids started walking around or anything.
Not yet.
The view, not yet. Oh yeah, there's still hope. And the view for me is two sleeping beagles on a comfy old sofa and snow through the window. How about you? Where are you in this moment?
I am. I'm a bit discombobulated because I'm not in my home. I'm in my sister-in-law's music studio because my home has a jackhammer in it right now. A man and a jackhammer. Waterproofing the basement. But today we have beautiful clear skies and sunshine. I also saw the eclipse yesterday. We did not have snow, and I went to a place where there was no cloud.
Do events like this get your creative soul really going, where you're thinking of things that you're writing while experiencing this amazing phenomena, Kate?
I tried to just be present with my own feelings and with a sense of mystery and wonder for me. And I don't know how it is for you. And I'd love to find out. The best place for me to write is surrounded by trees. What about you? Like, where's your writing room?
I write very early in the morning. I wake up, I get my coffee, I get things out. So sometimes it really is sitting up in bed with one of the dogs. But, you know, I am very, very drawn to nature. And whenever I can, I like to sit by the ocean. And I'm fortunate enough to live in a place that we are surrounded by water. There used to be a song called Thank God We're Surrounded by Water. But yes, the ocean, nature, trees, birds, something about it is just so creatively accepting. The lack of noise, the lack of rush.
Since I've been writing, which is really only since 2003 or something like that, I've been to Banff several times. I would say I've been to Banff 5 times writing. I'm from the West, and so I'm very drawn to the mountains. And for me, it's tuning into the mystery and the wonder and allowing. And there's also a little bit of fear. Like there's a little bit of fear of bears and cats and, you know, natural phenomenon that I'm not used to being, you know, living in a town. So, yeah, so all those things. Anyway, at Banff, I find myself incredibly productive.
Yeah, you know, the last time I was there, I think it was with the late Iris Turcotte. So that was a few years ago now, and we were working on a play of mine. And as a Newfoundlander, you know, that's a unique environment to be in with the bears and the deer running through the forest, but it insanely magical. There's a power in the land there. And I'm so glad we're talking about nature and mystery, because I wanted to ask you about something you wrote. I think it's in the preamble or to Mother's Daughter. You wrote about feeling, I think it was a communication with a dove.
Oh, yeah. The dove.
Would you like to talk about that? Because when I read that, I went, I understand what you mean.
So I was on a tour with a childhood friend of mine in the UK, and we were doing what I called the Catherine Parr Trail, um, which is a nice little joke for anyone who knows who Catherine Parr Trail is. It's not Catherine Parr, but I was doing my research on Catherine Parr and the stories that I was writing for the Queenmaker series of plays. And that is research on Catherine Parr, Elizabeth I, and Mary I. And I was at Mary's Castle. Now the name of it's just going to escape my wee brain. But it's up in, is it Norfolk or Suffolk? It's in Suffolk, I think. Yeah, it's in Suffolk. And this is the place where she ran to when Jane Grey was, had usurped the throne or taken the throne, been given the throne. Anyway, she ran to this place up in, it's the north of Suffolk. And it was there that she was told that she was the Queen of England because she was fighting forces from there. But the thing with Mary is that she has been so blackened by history. Like she makes an evil queen, right? She's the evil queen, whereas Elizabeth I is the goddess and the virgin. There was something about her that needed redeeming, I felt, or that I wanted to balance that story a little bit. And when I was walking the ramparts of that castle, this white dove, pure white, just flew down and landed in front of me. And wasn't like, why would it land in front of me, for starters? Like, why would it choose to land in front of a human being? I don't know. Anyway, it landed in front of me. I was walking the ramparts. It wasn't going anywhere. It just was like sitting there. And I just was open to the idea that this was a little bit of a visitation, that this was some kind of spirit saying, remember me, you know, and help to redeem me, help to change the story.
Is The Last Wife the first one that you wrote, or did they all come together?
Well, I was only going to write one. Like, The Last Wife was the only play I was going to write. And then I had to cut a scene out of The Last Wife because it wasn't meant to be in that play. And that was the scene. I had the whole scene where Catherine Parr and Thomas Seymour, who was her husband at that time, they hold Elizabeth I and cut her dress into 100 pieces. And you go, what the hell is that? And it was so dramatic to me, this eyewitness account of history, that I went, okay, that has to be in my play, but it couldn't be in The Last Wife. And so I knew that I had to write a whole play about that.
That is so interesting. It's sometimes really difficult to let go of a scene.
It's so funny how we compare ourselves to other playwrights, right? And you just go, what you do is so fabulous. What you do, Berni Stapleton, is so fabulous. You have such an incredibly clear and unique voice. It's really, really beautiful. I love that I am completely and utterly transported to a world that you create, and that you create purely in the voice of your characters. And I love that your beagles show up also. Your beagle shows up in your story, which is great.
Yeah. Well, I think, did I share The Antidote for Life with you?
Yeah. Is that the one? I can't remember the titles, but that's the one about when you forget your line.
Yes. So, yes, The Antidote for Life is I call it a true play. Because I also work as a performing artist, and just before the pandemic, I was in a performance of a play that I had done literally 100 times because we've been touring it on and off for some years, and I had an out-of-body experience on stage. I cannot explain it. The play, the role is in my DNA. And yet in a moment, in an intimate scene with another actor, I missed a cue. And in my mind, I was admiring his performance that evening. In my mind, I was thinking, oh, look at him. He's so good. And then realized that he's looking at me waiting for a cue. And I don't know if that's ever happened to you, but it could have been 900 years of my life in that moment. And then I started examining within myself and within our world, our profession, like what it means to be the holder of memory, to be the one who presents really the work. And so I started to write about it, and I wrote about, and so leading up to the pandemic, that experience created a tumultuous effect inside of me as a performer. I began to experience anxiety attacks while on stage. And I thought, I'm going to have to stop. I don't know what I'm going to do. Then the pandemic happened, and it kind of saved my life. And the other thing that saved my life was writing about it. And so in the play, I perform it on stage with a deck of cards. And on each card, I wrote the first line of each scene. And I deal the cards, and then I pull the card. And then I do the scene. So the story is never presented the same way twice, although it's always the same story, if that makes sense.
Yep, totally.
There's an expression, I don't know if this is a general expression for people who play cards or if it's just a Newfoundland thing. It's called, when you're playing cards, you go 30 for 60. It means that you're going to bet the whole works. You're going to play your whole hand in one go. And if you don't get the total 30, then you lose. You have to win every hand. And so I'm trying to bring that to everything I write now. Basically, as I become an older artist in the world as well, like sometimes stories that I was telling and thinking about 20 years ago, I want to re-examine now. And I don't know if that ever happens to you. If you think, I think I would do it that differently, you know?
It's fascinating, right? I'm writing a play about that right now, too.
What?
Yeah, I'm writing a play about memory and how memory alters with age. So it's a play about an incident that happened in the 1980s, and two people were involved in this incident. Well, more than two people were involved, but that's who's examining. Two people who haven't seen each other since the 1980s, who are in their 60s now, are examining this memory. And so that's a play I'm writing right now. It's called Sex in the 80s.
It's really difficult to think of the 80s as ancient times, but here we are. As a child of the 80s, this is really fascinating. I think, too, one of the things that I talk about in The Antidote for Life, which is a one-person show, I do present my thesis up front, which is that one of the hardest things to do as a writer is let go of the play and give it over to the production, because then it becomes something else that we can write it, it can be designed, it can be directed, but really everything just rests on the capacity of the performers, to absorb it. And sometimes, if we're lucky, they do it the way that we think they should do it. I don't know if you ever have that experience.
No, of course. You can't help but have that, right? You can't help but have that little bird on your shoulder going, oh, that's not right. That's not right.
Yes,
that's not right.
The little dove comes to say they're not saying it right. They're not doing it right.
Talk to me about one thing about Antidote for Life, because it is a one-person show, and you said that it is drawn from that experience, but also from journal entries. Like, in terms of finding all the words first, and then how do you clear the detritus out? What's your process there?
The process with this one was probably very unique for me because I was writing during the pandemic, and I literally was writing in my journal. But when I began to assemble the play, I literally wrote just little paragraphs on index cards because that's all I had in the beginning. And, I had the many more through lines that I ended up using. And that's always really, really difficult for me because I will ride madly off in all directions. You know, I'm like this and this and this and this and this, and I slimmed it down to memory, beagles, and a ghost story. And it was really, really hard. I think at one point I had, not 51 scenes, but I definitely had like a lot of scenes and a lot of pages that I just loved. I guess I had to say goodbye to the puppies. And I just try to serve the greater story, and for me in this moment it was memory, because that was the focus of the piece. And usually how I try to serve my main story is I will bury it, and so I will often dance around what I really want to say in my life and in my work. And like a lot of my work in Antidote for Life, it isn't really revealed immediately that this is about a woman who's terrified because she's lost her lines on stage, and now she's worried that she's going to lose everything else, you know. So it's definitely a process. It's really hard to define, isn't it? Like how we make that choice. But as you say, you know, it doesn't belong in this story. It just doesn't. If I want it here, it's just serving my ego and nothing else, you know, because it's a turn of a phrase, or it's a line that I think is pretty, or it sounds pretty, or whatever. So,
and I think we can be really proud of those moments as well, to just say, wow, this is excellent writing. I'm really, really pleased with this writing that doesn't belong here.
The best dramaturgy I ever got was from, because I make a lot of theater in very small places, in very small spaces, like community halls and parish halls and bingo halls. And I remember doing a play about, loosely based on my mother, who was a tuberculosis patient in the 1950s, and she lived in a sanitarium. And anyway, I did it in a very small community, and this lady, very lovely lady, came to see me afterwards as we were in the lobby, and she said, I would like my money back. And I said, oh, and she said, yes, your play wasn't long enough. And if I'm going to come out, I really do need to get my money's worth. And there was no intermission, so I couldn't have a drink, and I don't really understand it. So if I'm not going to understand your play, I don't want to pay you for it. And so I always try to make sure that my play is somewhat understandable.
I love that. I love that. But you see, you can use that, right? You just go, okay, I'm going to put that lady in another play at some point.
Yes.
Because I want someone who's that sort of specific and also unapologetic.
I know it can be a very annoying question, but where did the idea come from for the Queenmaker plays?
Right. So it was February 2011, and I was watching, it was the Arab Spring that was happening in North Africa and in the Middle East, and all these, you know, like Gaddafi and all these tyrants, all these tyrannical rulerships were falling. And you would see on the news these like literally hundreds of men, right, all gathered to be political. And on the balcony, it would be all men. And you go, okay, where are the women? These guys have wives and daughters. What is the relationship like between this kind of a tyrannical ruler and the wife? How much power, how much influence does the wife have? And how do these men teach their daughters? What do they teach their daughters? And so not being interested, yes, of course, as news, but not being able or it's not being appropriate for me to write a play about that. I I just was looking for another subject. And then I watched a movie or some kind of show on PBS about Henry VIII. And I went, oh, well, there's your tyrant. And then I started looking at his wives, and Catherine Parr came up. And the stuff about Catherine Parr that was not in the shows that I watched when I was a kid about the six wives of Henry VIII. And I was like, oh, well, why didn't we know that she was the first woman to publish her own writing in the English language under her own name? Why didn't we know that? Why isn't that public knowledge? Why did they depict her as being an older woman when she was in her 20s when she married Henry, who was in his late 40s or early 50s when he married her, So, and then she became the stepmother, if you will, of these two young women who were going to. So what influence did she have over these two women who were going to become queen? So I started writing that play.
I love that, and I find it really, really inspiring because I've just started tinkering on a piece over the last couple of years. I've been calling it Ophelia Swims. I may put zombies in it now. I don't know. I'm thinking about zombies, but I really have become obsessed with characters taking over their own stories in some way. And if a character could suddenly awaken and realize they're in a play that's going to be the same over and over and over, and if they could find a way to grab hold of their own freedom of will. And I was really drawn to the character of Ophelia, of course, for all kinds of reasons. So yes, and I've been sort of thinking along those lines, like about how what she was really thinking and what she was really feeling, and in that circumstance, in that family, in relation to Hamlet, and how she might have really felt about Hamlet. But it's fun to drop the restrictions. I just want her to take swimming lessons, so if she falls in the river, it's not going to be a problem.
That's great. I think that's great. Ophelia Swims. I just love it.
Has anything ever happened to you that made you question your ability as an actor?
Oh, sure. Like every time I have a job.
Yeah, Berni? Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Or every time I don't have a job. I know, it's crazy. It's because we're incredibly sensitive creatures, and it's imperative that we are so sensitive because that's what allows us to be the artists that we are. But it can also be so, it's like, it's depressing to come around to your fear again. You come around to your fear again. And it's like, seriously, I'm 61 years old. I don't need to be looking at my fear again, or new versions of my fear.
Oh, that is profound. And that sits right in my soul in this moment. Even, yes, now being in my 60s, and even apprehension about this conversation, for example. I read something recently that said, we can't curate how people perceive us. And I'm like, but I want to. I do not want to be seen for who I really am. And yet I want to be seen for who I really am. And I think that for those of us who carry both satchels, so to speak, we're writers, we're creators, and we're performers, I think it gives a special insight into so many things in terms of the performing arts. And particularly now, I want to make sure that I'm writing meaningful roles for women who are me or who are my age,
Exactly. Yeah. So I've got a couple of those going on, right?
Mm-hmm.
I got a play that I'm writing for young women.
Oh, cool.
But I also have two plays. Well, I have two plays I'm writing for younger people. And then I have two plays I'm writing for old farts like me.
I love it. What's one of the old fart plays?
Well, Sex in the 80s is one of the old fart plays.
Awesome.
And then I am writing, or I'm not writing yet. I'm writing in my mind. I have not touched a word onto the page yet about this, but I'm putting ideas together about a play. Because I often thought that if I was alive in the 17th century, I would have been drowned in a river as a witch, right? So I'm writing a play called The Ducking Chair. And my idea is that the audience comes into the theater, small space, whatever it is, and there's a big like teeter-totter, like a big board that goes, and that this end of the board, the down end, is in the audience, like at somewhere in the audience. And then up at this end is a woman, and she's tied to the chair. But she's a now kind of woman. She's not an ancient kind of woman. She's sitting there in a power suit. She's my age. She's led a life. At the base of the fulcrum, if you will, because this could go like this, are two lights. One is a green light and one is a red light. And by the end of the play, the audience, at a certain point, 15 minutes or so before the end of the play, the two lights come on, and the audience can either drown her as a witch or save her. So that's my idea, and I'm really excited about about provoking people enough to push the drown button.
You are playing with fire. Have you not seen any reality TV lately? They will drown you. They will drown you.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I love that you're writing it in your mind, first of all.
Right.
How many things do we write in our minds?
I was talking with a friend of mine who's a television writer just the other day about the way that women are rewriting history, if you will, and using the word revisionist. And I'm like, yes, we are revising. It's true, we are revising, but we are revising to, I think, express a point of view that is not expressed in what we have been taught, in what we have been handed down. And so to find these little acorns of interest, not truth, but interest, acorns of interest that we can then grow into our very own oak trees, and, oak trees that come from the point of view of someone else, not not what we've been handed for centuries, but something else, someone else, a different slant on things. And so I think if it is revisionist, that's the way it's revisionist, not to speak untruth, but to create a truth that was never recorded.
It is so very true. During World War II here in Newfoundland, hundreds of young women were actually recruited from central Newfoundland. At that time, it was its own country, to go to Canada to work at a textile mill in Hespeler, in Cambridge, Ontario. And nobody seems to know why they came to Newfoundland, of all places, to recruit these young women, but they were very industrious. There were no job opportunities, clearly, for young women in Newfoundland at that time. And so they went, but a lot of them stayed and worked in the factory, kept their jobs after the war was over. And I think 1 in 4 people in Cambridge now can trace their roots directly to Newfoundland. So we have loads of people who say, I feel I'm a Newfoundlander, even though I've never been, because my great-great-great-grandmother or my great-grandmother was from Newfoundland. But the story was never told or known because of exactly what you said. It was never written down. So stories like that, I guess it's so great to think about how when you and I are toiling away with our, with the jackhammers and the beagles and the things that beyond us, this lives on.
Yes. Oh, does it? Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
It does.
I guess it does. I guess it does. I always think of what everything I do is very ephemeral, but the thing with writing is you write it down. You do write it down. And so there is a chance um, for people in the future to look at our work and say, this is what was happening in theater then, or this is one of the things that was happening.
I wonder, like, if it is as a sort of a parting glass, if we each had something to say to a young person watching this. I'm trying to think of what I would say.
I'll go since I'll say yes. And so I think that I would reiterate, if you will, that it's imperative that all points of view are heard. It's imperative. And so have the audacity, the self-possession, and the courage to let your voice be one of those voices that is heard, and then have the grace to listen to all the others.
And I would say to my younger self and to anyone else, to walk with your fear, to learn to hold it and just walk with it.
Very wise, Berni.
Oh, you are so kind. Thank you so much for meeting with me.
I had a blast. You're awesome.
Oh, you are more awesome.
Great time reading your plays too, so everyone should read your plays, Berni.
Thank you so much.